The ocean is not a silent place, but for the USS Zumwalt, silence is the weapon. It begins not with the roar of gunfire, but with the quiet hum of a digital dream born in the chaotic aftermath of the Cold War. In the Pentagon's deepest planning rooms, admirals and engineers envisioned a predator unlike anything the world had ever seen. A ship that could glide through enemy waters like a phantom, visible to the naked eye as a massive, brooding monolith, yet shrinking to the size of a harmless fishing boat on the glowing green screens of enemy radar. This was the genesis of the DDG-10, a vessel forged from the desire to dominate not just the open ocean, but the dangerous, cluttered coastlines of the 21st century. The script of the Zumwalt is not written in the ink of traditional naval victories, for it has never fired a shot in anger, but rather in a dramatic saga of ambition, failure, technological hubris, and a desperate, high-stakes rebirth. To understand the Zumwalt, one must first understand the sheer audacity of her design. She does not cut through the water, she pierces it. Her hull, a tumblehome design resurrection from the ironclad era, slopes inward from the waterline, a geometric oddity that defies the graceful flair of traditional destroyers. This shape is not for aesthetics, it is for invisibility. Coated in radar-absorbent materials, with every antenna, winch, and gun barrel hidden behind flush panels, she is a floating stealth fighter. When she first slid into the dark waters of the Kennebec River in Maine, she looked less like a warship and more like a floating fortress from a science fiction nightmare. The world watched in awe and confusion. Critics called her a sea pyramid, a billion-dollar blunder, but to her crew, she was the future a ship, where the captain commanded, not from a bridge with windows overlooking the sea, but from a ship's mission center, buried deep within the superstructure, surrounded by walls of screens, fighting battles with data streams and algorithms. However, the drama of the Zumwalt lies in the chasm between her promise and her reality. She was built to be a land attack destroyer, a hammer designed to pound enemy shores with a revolutionary weapon, the Advanced Gun System, AGS. These twin 155mm cannons were engineering marvels, capable of hurling the long-range land attack projectile LRLAP over 60 nautical miles with pinpoint precision. Imagine the scene: a marine unit pinned down on a hostile beach, calling for fire support, and the Zumwalt, unseen miles offshore, delivering a GPS-guided shell that could alter its flight path mid-air to strike a specific window of a building. It was a terrifying capability, but this dream collapsed under the weight of economics. As the Navy slashed the order from 32 ships to a mere 3, the cost of the ammunition skyrocketed. Suddenly, a single shell cost nearly $1 million, the price of a cruise missile. The guns, the very heart of the ship's purpose, fell silent before they ever spoke. For years, the Zumwalt sailed with these massive cannons locked in place, useless gargoyles of steel, a dramatic symbol of a strategy that had failed. The narrative of the Zumwalt took a humiliating turn in November 2016, a moment that played out like a tragic act in a play. Fresh from her commissioning, the pride of the fleet was transiting the Panama Canal, the vital artery connecting the oceans. She was meant to be a show of force, a display of American technological supremacy, sailing toward a new home port in San Diego. Instead, she became a spectacle of frailty as she navigated the narrow locks. Her revolutionary integrated power system, an electrical grid capable of powering a small city, suffered a catastrophic failure. The massive ship lost propulsion. She drifted, helpless, her sleek, futuristic hull grazing the concrete walls of the canal lock. His symbolism was devastating. He was the most advanced warship in history, a $4 billion apex predator, being ignominiously towed by humble tugboats, her crew scrambling in the sweltering heat to restore power while tourists on the canal banks snapped photos of the crippled giant. It was a low point, a moment where the grey ghost seemed more like a white elephant. But a good script demands a redemption arc, and the Zumwalt was too valuable, too advanced to be discarded. The Navy, facing the rising maritime power of nations, like China in the vast expanse of the Pacific, realized that the era of shore bombardment was over. The era of great power competition had returned. The Zumwalt needed to evolve. The script flipped from a story of a failed land attacker to the birth of a blue water assassin. The decision was made to rip out the useless guns, that very reason, for her existence, and replace them with something far more lethal. The ship would become the world's first platform for the conventional prompt strike CPS system, hypersonic missiles. This transformation is where the current drama unfolds. The Zumwalt is no longer just a ship. She is a laboratory for the future of warfare. Workers at the Ingalls shipbuilding yard in Mississippi descended upon her composite superstructure, cutting into the hull to install massive vertical launch launch tubes. These are not for ordinary Tomahawk missiles, which fly at subsonic speeds. These are 4 weapons that glide at Mach 5 times the speed of sound, crossing oceans in minutes, maneuvering unpredictably to evade enemy air defenses. The tension now is not about whether the ship can float, but whether she can handle the violence of a hypersonic launch. The sheer physics involved are staggering: the heat, the thrust, the integration of a weapon that pushes the boundaries of material science into a ship controlled by a total ship computing environment that runs on millions of lines of code. Imagine a Zumwalt on a dark night in the Western Pacific, years from now. This is the scenario that keeps naval strategists awake. She is operating in silent running mode, her electric drive barely making a whisper underwater, her thermal signature masked by seawater injection systems cooling her exhaust. She's alone, far forward of the carrier strike group, deep inside the enemy's anti-axis bubble. Her radar, the powerful SPY-3, is in passive mode, listening, watching. The order comes not for a barrage of gunfire, but for a surgical strike. The silos on her foredeck open. There is no recoil, only a blinding column of fire as a hypersonic glide body erupts from the ship, turning the night into day for a split second before vanishing into the stratosphere. The enemy knows something has happened, but it is too late. The Zumwalt, her mission complete, slips back into the center noise of the ocean, a ghost once more. This is the promise that keeps the Zumwalt story alive. The ship has become a focal point for the US Navy's strategy in the Indo-Pacific. Her deployment is not just a patrol, it is a statement. When she sails, she carries the weight of a changing world order. Every port visit is scrutinized by foreign intelligence services. Every training exercise is watched by satellites. The battles she fights today are electronic and psychological. She conducts freedom of navigation operations, slicing through contested waters, daring rival navies to challenge her. Her crew, a small, elite cadre of fewer than 150 sailors, lives in a world of automated luxury compared to all the ship's staterooms, expansive galleys, but they also live with the anxiety of operating a ship that is essentially a prototype. They are the test pilots of the surface navy. There is a profound loneliness to the Zumwalt class. There are only 3 of them: the Zumwalt, the Michael Monsoor, and the Lyndon B. Johnson. They are orphans of a cancelled program, disparate from the hundreds of Arleigh Burke-class destroyers that form the backbone of the fleet. They do not fit into the standard operational doctrines. They require special supply chains, special training, and special tactics. This isolation adds to their mystique. When a Zumwalt-class destroyer appears on the horizon, it looks alien, a monolith of grey slate rising from the waves, devoid of the clutter of masts and wires. It looks unfinished, or perhaps like it has arrived from a future timeline. The drama also plays out in the Combat Information Center, CIC. On a traditional ship, the CIC is a dark, cramped room filled with the glow of radar scopes and the chatter of radio operators. On the Zumwalt, the SMC ship's mission center looks like the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. It is 2 stories, tall, lined with massive screens, where officers sit in ergonomic chairs controlling the ship's systems with touchscreens and trackballs. It is a quiet, air-conditioned environment where the violence of war is abstracted into icons and data streams, but the tension is just as high. In a hypothetical conflict, this room would be the brain of the fleet's kick-down-the-door force. The Zumwalt's job would be to penetrate the most heavily defended waters on Earth, to blind the enemy's sensors, and to open a corridor for the aircraft carriers and aircraft. It is a suicide mission if the stealth fails. If at fishing, boat-sized radar cross-sections suddenly blooms into a destroyer on enemy screens, the Zumwalt would be the target of every missile in the theater. Recent years have seen the Zumwalt trying to prove she is more than a tech demo. She has conducted rough-water trials near Alaska, proving that her tumblehome hull, which critics feared would capsize in heavy seas, can actually cut through storms with terrifying stability. She has sailed to Japan, integrating with the 7th Fleet, practicing the complex dance of modern naval warfare. But the specter of her troubled birth always lingers. Every maintenance delay, every software glitch is amplified by the media. The breakdown in the Panama Canal is never forgotten. It is the scar on her reputation that she must work tirelessly to fade. The installation of the hypersonic missiles is the climax of her second act. It is a frantic race against time. The geopolitical temperature in the Pacific is rising. The Navy needs a ship that can hold targets at risk thousands of miles away, and they need it now. The Zumwalt is the only platform large enough and advanced enough to carry these massive new missiles without a decade of new construction. The wasteful size of the ship, once criticized, has suddenly become her greatest asset. She has the space, the power, and the cooling capacity to host the weapons of the future. The empty void left by the removal of the gun magazines is now the womb for the conventional prompt strike system as the script moves toward the future. We see the Zumwalt finally finding her identity. She is no longer the confused shore bombarder. She is the sniper. She is the capital ship of the stealth age. Her battles are currently fought in the dry docks of Mississippi and the simulation rooms of the War College. But the reality of her metal and circuitry is preparing for the day when the simulations stop. The story of the USS Zumwalt is a uniquely American tragedy and triumph, a story of overreach, failure, and the relentless, expansive, and dramatic drive to innovate. She is a ship that was built too early for a war that hadn't started yet, and now, as that war looms on the horizon, she is finally becoming the weapon she was destined to be. The saga continues with the crew, the men and women who wear the patch of the Zigram, a nod to Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, the reformer for whom the ship is named. They are keenly aware of the target painted on their backs. To serve on the Zumwalt is to be under constant scrutiny. They know that if the ship fails again, the critics will howl. But if she succeeds, if she slips past the sensors, delivers her hypersonic payload, and vanishes, she will change naval history forever. The Zumwalt is a gamble, a high-stakes bet placed on the table of maritime dominance. And as she slices through the Pacific swells, silent, grey, and menacing, the world holds its breath, waiting to see if the ghost is real.